Former Texas Governor Rick Perry believes that Texans are willing to endure the freezing cold temperatures and rolling blackouts so that they could spite big government. Yes, the big bad government, which is right now actually trying to help people in Texas. All right, so now the Lone Star State has been gripped by blackouts caused by extreme snowstorms, Uri, winter storm. And as of Wednesday morning, about 2.7 million households in Texas were still without power, according to the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Yes, reliability. Yes. Perry said Texans would be without electricity for longer than 3 days to keep the federal government out of their business. Try not to let whatever the crisis of the day is to take your eye off of having a resilient grid that keeps America safe personally, economically, and strategically. He didn't actually say strategically. I said that, but still, you can just imagine. Not the smartest person. All right, so he keeps talking about the word resilient, right? Well, I don't. This kind of looks like the opposite of resilient. Not only that, but how does this help America? Texas has its own grid, like its own separate, completely privatized energy grid that is not hooked up to the rest of the country. What does this have to do with that? Nothing. Now, the former governor was responding to a prompt from Kevin McCarthy, suggesting that those watching on the left may see the situation in Texas as an opportunity to expand their top-down radical proposals. Well, do I not feel seen right now? Turns out, Rick Perry, he's on to me. He's on to me in my top-down radical proposals. You know, the ones like getting free energy every time the sun shines and the wind blows. That's super, super radical, right? Super radical. How radical? Or maybe even having a grid that is regulated and redundant so that storms don't knock out power during deadly conditions. And if it does, that it's restored quickly and so that people don't freeze. Or that if there is an emergency, the people who still have power, still have heat, are able to, are not subject to gigantic price shocks. Like, for example, the customers of Gritty, who, saw their energy prices soar so much that the company's like, you could, for the love of God, go and find another provider, please. We are going to charge you so much. You got to go. Our prices are $9,000 per kilowatt hour. Whereas before, the pre-storm, it was like $50. Radical. The radical. Communism. Big government. No, according to Perry, though. Rick Perry, by the way. Rick Perry used to be the Secretary of Energy. Do you know why he took that position in the first place? Because he thought, he'd be like, you know what I want to do as Secretary of Energy? I want to go and sell oil and coal, natural gas to, other countries. I thought that was the entire position of the Secretary of Energy. No, the Secretary of Energy actually has, part of his job was to control the nuclear arsenal of the country. Didn't really have anything to do with being an ambassador for oil and gas across the country. That's what he wanted to do. It's crazy. But this guy says, well, the way to prevent future blackouts is to ensure that Texas has a reliable baseload of energy resources, which of course typically refers to coal, natural gas, and nuclear-based power plants. Here's what he said. If wind and solar is where we're headed, the last 48 hours ought to give everybody a real pause. Yes. Yes, of course. We need to have a base load, and the only way you can get base load in this country is with natural gas, coal, and nuclear. So now, look, I'm going to say something that's pretty controversial among lefties. I'm actually fairly pro-nuclear. I know. Fukushima Daiichi, that was horrible. There's still the effects going on. There's radiation. We don't know what ironically, the fallout really of that is going to be 10, 20, 50 years into the future. And that was a huge natural disaster, not natural disaster, but an absolute man-made disaster, which was actually made worse because, I mean, the situation there, I think it was an older plant, and it was built in a place that was prone to flooding and was protected and all that stuff. But compared to coal and oil and natural gas, nuclear is far safer and more of a viable energy source. Now, of course, there's a huge problem with nuclear waste. That is a problem. Where do you put that? People are, it's getting buried. And of course, that's going to have an impact later on. Of course, there are there are technologies that are being tested and worked out that could actually eliminate nuclear waste as well, and allow us, of course, to generate clean energy and allow us to get off fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, again, yes, nuclear is not perfect. Nuclear has a lot of drawbacks. It's also very expensive to set up. But you also have the situation where it ends up being a little bit cleaner or a lot cleaner emissions-wise than coal, oil, and natural gas. And so that's, okay, so there's that. But again, on that point, right? So what's wrong with also having a large part of your energy mix that is solar and wind powered? So now on the point of talking about, wow, we need a base load. Well, there are things called batteries that can store energy to ensure that you have a base load when the sun isn't shining and wind isn't blowing. So, you can make sure to continue to have a source of energy that is available without actually, having to have these things that are on. So, all right. But anyway, that even wasn't the problem, though. The problem is that, well, let me read here from the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Quote, the Texas blackouts were largely caused by a number of failures in coal, nuclear, and natural gas energy systems, which were not prepared to withstand extreme cold. So meaning they were not winterized. So I told you before, I talked about this, where we have wind turbines in Michigan. It's currently very cold here, even getting into the single digits, very, very cold. And yet our wind turbines did not freeze because they were properly winterized. You also have wind turbines that exist in places like Alaska, Antarctica. They didn't freeze because we properly winterized them. It turns out that if you take proper procedures and yes, lose a little bit of money in order to winterize, your sources of energy, they might not fail in the times where you need them the most. Weird. So, and interestingly enough, by the way, wind actually surpassed daily production forecasts during the past weekend. So wind energy actually picked up energy production. So look, you want to blame this on wind turbines like Greg Abbott is doing. I showed you that video. When they made up only about 7% of your energy production mix in the case of Texas, well, that's completely ridiculous. All right, whatever happened to the 90% that's oil and gas? And the rest, I assume, is like solar, geothermal, etc. Their energy mixes. Again, 90% fossil fuel. Oh, but no, let's just ignore that. Own the libs. You know what I mean? While our people are freezing. And by the way, you know who's not freezing? Rick Perry. Rick Perry does not, he's not living in an area where he's lost power. How about Rick Perry? If he's going to tell people, well, you just need to suck it up for the next few days, and I think Texans are willing to do so, so that we can keep the federal government out of our business. Okay, well, Rick Perry, go there and live your truth. Go there and live for the next week, in one of these areas that has been hit. and say, no, I don't want the federal government coming in here. I'm just going to live without power. Go ahead and do that. Then he can talk about, if he survives, how he fought socialism on principle. Practice what you preach, my friend. That's all I'm saying.
If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.